fight is not done!
I don't remember the last time I've waited so eagerly for the second season of an animated series. If the OG 90s X-Men the animated series set the bar high, X-Men 97 was the perfect continuation of the legacy. And now, we finally have the highly anticipated Season 2. Well, I wasted no time in watching the first 3 episodes that have been released, and I'm impressed. I mean, not only did the first 3 episodes cover some of the most intense storylines across X-Men lore, but the narrative has also upped the stakes, which is saying something given how the first season ended. There is a lot to unpack here because the season premiere with the 3 episodes had been rather eventful. So in this video, I will take you through the entire course of the story so far and elaborate a little bit on the ending, while also analyzing what it means for the rest of the second season. There will be some major spoilers along the way, so you have been warned. If you don't remember how things went down in the first season, you can check out our recap video on the channel. I'll just touch upon the cliffhanger season 1 ending here, where the X-Men got separated into 2 groups. Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm, Morph, and Wolverine ended up in the future in the year 3960, where Apocalypse has taken over as a tyrant. On the other hand, Professor Xavier, Magneto, Rogue, Beast, and Nightcrawler have landed in ancient Egypt, where Apocalypse is yet to become the terrifying villain that we know him to be. He is still the spirited mutant En Sabanur, fighting against slavery and oppression by the ruling class. So how does the story go from here? To test Marvel animation and the pressure of the rich legacy? Let's all find out.
We gotta get the X-Men back to the 90s.
Days of Past Future is a treat for the fans. I couldn't have hoped for a better first episode because Days of Past Future really gets you hooked onto the second season with immediate effect. The story picks up right where it left off, and there is a news broadcast talking about the disappearance of the X-Men. But Bishop and Forge have already figured out where they are, and they have even come up with a time machine to retrieve them back to the 90s. But they're also concerned about the timelines where the X-Men had ended up, and rightly so. 3960 AD Atlantic Basin and 3000 BC Nile Delta are 2 of the darkest points in time for the history of humanity, but they decide to tackle the situation nonetheless. Bishop heads to the past and Forge travels to the future in what is going to be a thrilling rescue mission. Forge doesn't have a moment to breathe because once he arrives in the future, he is immediately attacked by robotic cyberhounds. He puts up a fight, but he is outnumbered and cornered. Wolverine and Storm intervene just in time, and it is quite a sight to see Wolverine in his feral best as he rips out the cyberhounds with his bone claws. You might remember that Magneto had ripped out his adamantium skeleton, but it seems like he is managing just fine. Forge is not thrilled when he finds out about the circumstances. Jean and Scott do not want to leave their son Nathan, and they want to help him become the soldier that he needs to be in order to defeat Apocalypse, which is the prophecy. For now, they travel to the Ascani base, which is basically a rebellion group that stands to oppose the rise of Apocalypse. The Ascani are a psychic group, and I think Mother Ascani is a very interesting character here, given how she dwells in riddles and an air of mystery. Meanwhile, Apocalypse is up to no good, and his priest Ozymandias gives him an idea that can potentially help him to exist forever. He wants to use the body of Nathan as his permanent physical vessel, and Apocalypse sends in his horsemen to get the job done. Back with Cyclops and his family crisis, Scott and Jean cannot just come to terms with abandoning Nathan. In fact, Cyclops is worried that Mother Ascani's prophecy about Nathan might be made up in order to instill hope among the fighters, and he and Jean also battle the dilemma to tell Nathan about their real identity as his parents. Jean does her best to teach Nathan how to control the techno-organic virus with his telekinesis powers, and I really like the little bonding and training moments between them. Also, Cyclops tries to convince Mother Ascani to let Nathan go, but she is not someone who gives up on destiny. Apocalypse's horsemen attack at the worst possible moment. Nathan is just utilizing his telepathic abilities to hear the thoughts in his parents' minds, and he asks them about Cable, and before they can give him a proper answer, they are attacked. Cyclops and Jean try to fight back, but they are soon overpowered and taken prisoner. All three of them are taken to the Citadel on a high-speed train, and I must point out that this little moment is enough to remind you about the insane powers of Apocalypse and his horsemen. After finding out about their disappearance, Mother Ascani and the others plan a daring rescue, to which Storm has a key role to play. Ascani tells her to summon the solar storm to power their craft with enough speed to stop them before they reach the impenetrable Citadel. There is another major revelation here when Mother Ascani says that it was her who brought the X-Men through time to save the universe. The final moments of the first episode are rather eventful. Jean and Cyclops finally tell Nathan that they are his parents, and this convinces him about his true powers. He is able to break free and he frees them as well, and it becomes the perfect rescue mission when the others join the fight. But while the plan is to leave, Mother Ascani sends them into the Citadel because while their mission might be over, Nathan's is still incomplete, and he must become who he was always destined to be. As for Apocalypse, it is a major setback for him as his fortress is breached, and it is also heartening to see Storm unleashing her true powers as she defeats his horsemen. He plans to strike back, but Apocalypse wants to hit them when they're the most vulnerable, which is during the 90s. Somehow it is all coming back to the present timeline of the show, and in the present day, Cable, Psylocke, and Archangel are talking about recruitment for their mission, and they look at pictures of Jubilee and Sunspot. This episode is a pretty solid adaptation of the adventures of Cyclops and Jean Grey, and the importance of young Nathan or the emotional hook of the parents having found their son so unexpectedly keeps the story going. In fact, now that I think of it, the episode also draws from Uncanny X-Force, especially when it comes to the final horseman. Jubilee owns the show and a force to be reckoned with. After our tryst with the future timeline, we're back into the present timeline. And this time around, it is all about Jubilee. No, I'm kidding. It's not all about her, but she is such a key character and emerges with such main character energy that I almost got distracted about the others. So, with the main X-Men team gone, she is somewhat clueless, and she is definitely not happy with what the government is up to. This is where X-Factor comes into the picture. It is a government organization that's supposed works to eliminate threats with the help of mutants, and when Monette, Quentin, and Mark show up at the abandoned Xavier School looking for a safe space, they are spotted by Havoc, who takes them into custody. Havoc works for the X-Factor, and they are currently relocating mutants for their own safety, which is not something that Jubilee agrees with. I love the detailing here because Monette, Mark, and Quentin are all from the comic books. Monette could fly and regenerate, while Mark was known for his energy blasts, and Quentin, aka Kid Omega, was a powerful mutant with telekinesis powers. Meanwhile, Cable finds Jubilee and Sunspot at an arcade, and he is leading the X-Force for a mission to track down the War Horsemen. After joining the X-Force, they all head out looking for War, and it is a memorable fight sequence when they finally capture this powerful Horseman of Apocalypse. When they try to see through him psychically, it is shown briefly that he is delivering a casket to Apocalypse, and I wonder if this has anything to do with Gambit. Nevertheless, they can find out nothing more because his mind is blocked by a psychic wall of diamonds, and Cable kills War as they go looking for Emma Frost. Yes, the diamond blocking was a major giveaway. Their search leads them to a mysterious cargo that had to be moved onto Switzerland, and they even find a tech that was used to turn the Horsemen into loyal and mindless servants. Warren, who has been able to break out of it, says that his tech is even more advanced than the one used on him, but their investigation is interrupted by the government organization X-Factor. It is a direct confrontation between X-Force and X-Factor, and I consider this to be God-level fan service. Of course, the X-Force does not relent and they fight back, and there is a hilarious moment here when Jubilee calls Havoc a Cyclops knockoff. I mean, she isn't wrong, is she? Even with the spirited fight, Jubilee is captured and put in a cell with a power inhibitor around her neck. Sunspot is unable to save her, but there is still a twist in store. Polaris, who seemingly works for the X-Factor, is convinced about Jubilee's mission and she helps her escape. It is a scene worth savoring as she fights her way out, and while she is at it, she also saves all the other mutant kids locked up at the facility. As for the final moments of the episode, we're back to the future, where Nathan has to bid an emotional farewell to his parents. This is not the time for emotions, and his duties as the prophesied hero has to be prioritized. It is farewell for the Summers family, as the X-Men in this timeline are all transported back to the 90s. Suddenly, it seems like the present timeline will soon become rather crowded with so much happening. The second episode actually changes the pace of the narrative considerably. We go from a very serious season opener to a more fun and thrilling journey. I could actually see the over-the-top and vibrant side of some classic X-Men comics in this. If you've grown up on these, you will surely welcome the nostalgic touch. It is almost an episode that is straight out of the 90s, and the moral conflict between the idealistic Jubilee and the ruthless Cable really stands out. Rise of Apocalypse Part 1. The real action begins with En Sabanur. I don't know about you, but for me, this is what I've been waiting for the most. I really wanted to see Apocalypse in action before he became the dreaded villain because En Sabanur has a sympathetic story to go with him. While the others might be back at the X-Mansion, but there is still no sign of Bishop and the likes of Xavier and Magneto because they had their own struggles in ancient Egypt. Back in 3000 BC, En Sabanur and Magneto discuss about fear, and I'm glad to see that Magneto still hasn't lost his touch. He talks to a spirited En Sabanur like the perfect motivational speaker as he tells him about his potential to become a god among insects. Probably not the best thing to say to a future mega villain. Nur has gathered an army of sandstormers and he goes to attack Pharaoh Ramatut, who's not worried in the slightest. En Sabanur is still a minor nuisance for him at this point, and when Kandra, a powerful telekinetic mutant, warns him, he simply tells General Logos to handle the defenses. Also, Logos is a pretty interesting character because I find him to be a fusion between characters like Master Order, Lord Chaos, and the In-Betweener. He is determined to ensure that the power that Nur and his forces seek is safely reserved for the Pharaoh, who is also after the power source. It just so happens that even the X-Men want access to the power in order to have a chance to go back to their timeline, according to Beast's calculations. As Nur and his forces ride up to attack the Pharaoh, I also noticed the presence of Bale, the one who discovered and abandoned En Sabanur as an infant and raised him to become a powerful warrior. It has been quite a transformation from the life of a slave to a life of someone who reclaims what is his. But the real question is if he can actually be saved by the X-Men from becoming someone who only cares about his extreme survival of the fittest theory. Xavier and Magneto don't really agree on this matter because Xavier is worried about Magneto trying to mentor En Sabanur given his future timeline. Meanwhile, Magneto is more keen to find Pharaoh's tech since it can help them, and for him, Nur is not an abomination, but a misguided mutant who can be handled. In fact, he does well initially to check Nur's darker impulses, such as when Logos is defeated and captured. Nur shows him mercy, and instead of slaughtering him, wants to take him a prisoner, much to the annoyance of Bale, who doesn't like these changes. Magneto does his best to try and rewrite the history by bringing Nur to their side and handling him better, but fate is not something that can be changed so easily. Xavier is initially hesitant to go into Logos' mind to find the location of the Temple of the Star Gods for the power they seek, but he eventually uses his psychic powers. However, his experience while probing his mind is somewhat unexpected, and he barely snaps out of it. Meanwhile, Nur and his men have already found tech, and Nur is shocked when he discovers that the X-Men have been lying to him. Of course, Bale has been in his head all this time, and now he is furious and wants them all destroyed. It is another intense battle to sign off, and Bishop finds them just in time to help out with his advanced weapons. To make matters worse for En Sabanur, the Pharaoh discovers his location and sends a massive surge of power to destroy him. It is a chaotic end to the saga, and just the kind where the show leaves you high and dry to wait for the next episode. I know En Sabanur is far from gone, and I think it will all come down to a final confrontation by the time we near the end of the season. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they're all stuck here for some more time, and it might not be as easy as Cyclops and company, who have found their way to their own timeline. Nevertheless, it marks the end of a perfect run, and the 3 episodes have been nothing short of perfect. Chef's kiss. Does the story feel rushed to some extent? Well, if I'm being totally honest, I guess it does. But then a show like this doesn't get to choose. There is only so much to cover that a 30-minute episode can do. And with so much detail to run through, it has to be very fast-paced. What has really impressed me, however, are the tons of Easter eggs for the comic book fans. You will see glimpses of famous comic book arcs like The Rise of Apocalypse or The Adventures of Cyclops and Jean Grey, and more importantly, the new mutant characters introduced works well for the future of the show. I think it is indeed a smart move to separate the X-Men because this allows adequate focus on each character, and the introduction of groups like X-Force and X-Factor are also welcome moves. Maybe the political and social stance of the show has gone down slightly, but that is neither a pro nor a con. I mean, we all love the underlying social messages, but there is still enough time to get to all that while the initial aim must have been to cover a major chunk of the story that they intend to tell this season. I love the fact that the second season hasn't dropped the ball at all, and this impressive storytelling will go places if handled properly. I cannot wait to see what happens next, and make sure to check out the prediction video on our channel where we try to anticipate the next course of action for the X-Men. If morning shows today, this has been a wonderful beginning, and I'd love to hear your take on the first 3 episodes in the comments section below. Also, if you appreciate the effort to bring you this content, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more such videos. This is the V of Marvelous Videos, and I'll be seeing you on the next one.